And we're live. Welcome back, everybody. This is the Podcaster Nation. And I say welcome back because I know you were just listening to one of our other episodes and you came back immediately because you wanted more. And we have a lot more for you. This is the podcast that is about podcasters, it's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. And my guest today is a podcaster. You guessed it. That's right. So here we go. Folks, welcome to the Podcaster Nation. I'm Rory Paquette. I'm your host. I love being here. I love you folks. This is the podcast where the rising tide raises all ships. We're here for each other, and this podcast is for you. So if I haven't interviewed you yet, contact me because I want you on the show. Today, we have an unbelievable podcaster with us. This lady is great. I only got to talk to her for a couple minutes before the show. Love her energy, love her attitude. She's excited. She's got a fantastic backdrop. Let me just tell you, love that picture behind you. Please welcome to the show the host of High Ticket Woman, Debbie Caudle. Debbie, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Roy, for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you for coming on. I know we had a little issue getting you on this morning, but man, you're a trooper.
Do we talk about that? Do I tell the story?
If you would like, I'd love for you to tell the story because it's happened to so
I'm
many
happy.
people.
I'm happy to laugh at myself. So I usually interview my own guests on Fridays, and they go into my master calendar system, which is through TidyCal, and then there's a Zoom link attached to that for them and for me. And I highlight it yellow in my Google Calendar. So last night I was telling my husband, I have this in my Google Calendar. It says interview with Rory, but it's not in TidyCal and there's no Zoom link. I don't know what this is. So I'm clearly not interviewing somebody because they don't know I'm interviewing them. They didn't get any notification or Zoom link. So delete. And I was so excited because I was going to be able to sleep in for the first time on a Friday morning in ages. And so I wake up, I look at my phone, first thing I always do. Oh no, I just got this message from this guy named Rory, and he's saying, see you in 30 minutes. Oh crap. So and then I was like, well, and you gave it to me in Eastern time, and I'm in Mountain. So I'm like, did I miss it? Did I miss it? Or is it still ahead of me? So I quickly messaged you and said, what time zone are we talking about? And that's when I realized I had 30 minutes to get ready. So I said to my husband, I'm being interviewed. It's not the other way around. And so he quickly was out here setting everything up, and I was in the bathroom putting my makeup on, and I made it here in record time. I'm so proud of myself. But yeah, that's what happened.
That's a great way to get started. And you look amazing. So you did all that in 20 minutes. Congratulations. Because
Thank you.
this ensemble I'm sporting right here took more than 20 minutes. And I'm just a 54-year-old dude. So
I'm a 55-year-old dudette. So yeah, I rushed. Let me tell you, I was like, I am making this happen. I am not standing him up.
well, thank you for accommodating. I appreciate it. I mess up everybody, especially on this show, because I don't use like Calendly or any of that stuff. I'm just, old school. I talk to you on, hey, when
Yeah,
can we schedule it? And we go, but then nobody
yeah,
gets all the reminders and everything else. So you're just not
yeah.
alone. The reason I'm so happy you told the story, there's probably 30 other podcasters who I've interviewed already who all had the same issue.
Yeah.
You know?
So heads up, guys, if you have it on your Google Calendar with Rory, it's a real thing. And I didn't have I didn't put your last name in my Google Calendar. So I was like, I don't even know if I could go find this person's email because I don't have their last name to like,
Right.
anyway. Yeah.
It's all
So,
good. You're
but
here now. You're
I'm
here
here
now.
now.
All right. So, Debbie, your podcast, High Ticket Woman. Let's start off. Give everybody a quick little, hey, what's the podcast about? Who's it for?
Yeah. So originally it's for women, obviously. I'm a therapist, a licensed mental health therapist, and I have a private pay coaching business, therapy business, and then I have insurance clients. So it's sort of like I have a foot in two different worlds, and I market my private pay business predominantly to women of faith. And so I developed this podcast for them. And really, the premise behind the podcast is that we as women don't expect enough of ourselves. And so then we don't expect enough from our relationships, predominantly with men, but it can be our relationships with anybody for that matter. So I speak to everything about how, for women, about how to elevate their own sense of self-worth in all kinds of issues. And as I said, expect more from themselves so that they expect more from other people.
Excellent. I love that. I mean, I've had a chance to listen to some of your stuff. You've got some very powerful stuff on your podcast. How,
Thank you.
what leads you to do this? I mean, where are you
Yeah.
from? Who are you? How do you end up doing this sort of thing, helping people like this?
It's a twisted story. Well, I'm Canadian, so we'll go back to the very beginning. And I'm from Canada, but I've lived in the United States well more than half my life. I I found my way to being a therapist in university. I was going to be a teacher. I disappointed my parents, so I didn't become a teacher. And I went into, after a number of years working in clinics and even college settings, I went into private practice in full time in 2005. And I was married to my first husband at the time. And my idea when I went into private practice was to like sort of step back from being full time, let him, to be the primary breadwinner. It didn't happen that way. I went to a conference and the main speaker was talking about she kept referencing horses in this therapeutic setting. And I knew my husband, who was sort of like a wannabe cowboy, I knew he'd be intrigued. So I went up and talked to her and found out what she was talking about, came home, told him, and a year later, he and I were getting trained to do this kind of therapy that involves using horses with clients. So I went from having a part-time practice to us buying 44 acres in Wyoming, which is where we lived at the time, building a giant indoor horse arena with a loft upstairs and offices downstairs. And that was the start of our business at the time, which we called Gates of Change, GAITS, Gates of Change. And we built a thriving equine-based therapy business. He gave up his career to be the horse professional, the other half of me, because when you work with horses, you got to have a horse professional in the session. And we drew a lot of kids and families. We were contracted with doctors. We were the only ones in our area who did this kind of therapy. Um, but that transitioned me from part-time therapist cutting back to like this is our livelihood. And it was great until it was so stressful that I just couldn't handle anymore. We had other therapists, we had a doctor working for us part-time, and we were billing insurances and Medicaid and yada yada yada, and it was a ton of pressure. And my marriage was unraveling at the time. I didn't fully see that, but it was. And so ultimately, I basically shut it down. It was a process of doing that, but we actually it culminated in us leaving Wyoming and moving back to Texas, which is where we had originally met. And so for the next 2 years, I had minimal practice. Um, I just was burnt out. I was really tired. And then we went over through our church and we served in Jordan, the Middle East, for a year. And we actually separated over there. So
Oh,
when I
wow.
came back, I had virtually no practice. So I had to start all over again. And back in the day, when you had a business, you had yellow pages, you would hand out business cards. We lived in a small town of 10,000 people. So I could go put up a flyer, at the lumberyard store, the feed store, Walmart's bulletin board, and get clients that way. But I was stepping back into a completely new world in 2018 of like, I have no idea how to do this. Everything is social media. So I was separated pending divorce but I needed to do this. I needed to start this back up again. And I wanted to start it back up again. So it's been a 6-year journey that has involved a number of business coaches helping me along the way.
Wow.
And the not the last one, but the one before that is the one who introduced me to the whole concept of podcasting. And he made it very clear in that time that I was working with him that podcasting isn't about getting new clients. Podcasting is about warming up the people who are already subscribed to your email list so that they can learn who you are and what you're about and what you value. And I just embraced that idea. So when I started the whole podcasting journey, it wasn't, I wasn't hung up on like how many people were listening to me or, and he said, it's a minimum 2-year commitment, Debbie. Don't go into this doing a handful of episodes and then thinking that, you're going to have this huge audience and everybody's going to be calling you up for appointments. And I'm really, really glad he told me that, because that, of course, is not, that did not happen. But, when I came to the podcasting, sort of decision, ironically, I've never been one who listened to a lot of podcasts. I don't know if I should admit that on a podcast. The only podcast I had really listened to was his, because I was trying to glean as much from him as I could. So I on my way to the gym, I would be biking to the gym. I'd plug in one of his podcasts, and so he would talk about podcasting on some of his episodes. So I really learned a lot from listening to his podcast, but I'm not somebody who actually like. I talk to clients before working with him, and they'd be like, "Yeah, I'll do the dishes. I'm listening to my favorite podcast, or I'm driving to work. I'm listening to my favorite podcast." So I was familiar with this whole podcasting thing, but I wasn't one who was doing that. I wasn't someone who was like really into listening to podcasts until I started listening to his. So even the way I do my podcast is really sort of piggybacked off of how he does his. I haven't gone out and listened to like the way other people do theirs and how they do their intro. I just sort of learned it from Luke. And in some ways I'm like, I don't want to know what I'm doing wrong, because I do, but in some ways I'm like, I'm so busy that I just want to do it the way I'm going to do it. And then, I'll figure it out as I go along. But anyway, that's sort of the very condensed story of how I ended up going. I'm gonna add podcasting to all my organic strategies for, warming up my client list. So yeah,
Nice. Very, very nice. I mean, wow, you just threw a whole lot out there.
I
I,
did. I
I'm
know.
I'm still stuck in Jordan.
I know. I know. I told you it's a twisted story. I went from Canada to California to Texas to Wyoming, back to Texas, remarried in Texas. My husband and I now went to Florida, and now we live in Mexico. I know, it's crazy.
Wow. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Okay. I, oh my gosh. I mean, holy
Yeah.
cow. What
Yes.
quite the story. The equine therapy is something I've heard, about
Yeah.
before. I mean, that's a pretty, I think was
Yeah.
that mainstream back then when you were doing it? Or was it sort of cutting edge
No,
back then?
and I don't do it anymore. I have nothing against it. It's extremely powerful. You don't actually put anybody on a horse. Horses are just, they become big, giant moving metaphors for people. So you learn when you're trained, you learn how to use them as metaphors, and you give activities to people with the horses, and everything becomes a metaphor. I mean, that horse might be your mom, and that horse might be you. And now we're using the behavior of those horses to talk about your relationship with your mom. And so maybe the activity is to get your mom to come over to you, the horse you, and stand there for 2 minutes. So how you go about we'll give you some tools, but we don't tell you how to use them. How you do that gets used. It's really powerful. I will say that it's really powerful. But you have to have a horse professional. You have to have a facility to do that. In Wyoming, that's a cold place, you know, three quarters of the year. So we had to build an indoor arena. And it's an expensive type of therapy because you got to pay for the horses, you got to pay for the horse professional. You can't just have a client and a therapist. So, yeah. So when we sold our ranch and moved back to Texas, that was the end of that.
Hmm.
So,
Okay.
yeah,
So now you're not doing the equine therapy anymore. Describe the type of
no.
therapy you're doing today with the different groups of folks you're
Sure.
doing. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm in my 31st year of working with people. I got my master's when I was 25, yeah. And I'd already done a year of, internship working with clients. So I've been doing this a long time. And when I worked with the horses, I worked with a lot of children, but I made a decision towards the tail end of that, even if I was good at working with this whole cross group of people, I wasn't passionate about working with that whole cross group of people. So I work with adults now. And because I'm Christian, I really like to present myself as a Christian therapist. I work with people who don't consider themselves to be Christian, which is totally fine. But I wanted to give a safe place for people who are looking for a faith-based practice to talk about their issues, with their faith, as part of that. So that's that's how I market myself. And people find their way to me, in lots of different ways. But I mainly focus on relationships. So I do a lot of couples work. I do a lot of individual work. Underlying all these, relationship issues, people are struggling with the normal things. They're struggling with anxiety. They're struggling with depression. The world's a crazy place. And sometimes the anxiety and or depression is the byproduct of an unhealthy relationship. Sometimes the depression, anxiety existed first and are exacerbating the relationship. It doesn't matter. I work with all of that. And people are multi-layered, and complex beings. So there are addictions that get thrown into that. People handle their problems in all kinds of ways. So, after 30 years, I'm totally used to people showing up with a drinking problem, a gambling problem, a sex problem. So I don't, if that's their main issue, I'll refer them out to a specialist. But there are lots of co-occurring issues with people. So I work with all of that. And I'm the kind of therapist, there are therapists out there who really believe that clients have the answers within, and that if a therapist just allows you to talk your problems out, you will find the answers by going through that process of talking. I'm not that kind of therapist. I'm the kind of therapist who, after doing this a long time, believes that the people who are coming to me are looking for solutions. They're looking for answers. They're looking for tools. And in fact, I had someone tell me the other day, Debbie, if I just wanted to pay somebody to vent to, I would go out and paint that tree in my backyard. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I get it. And so I have sort of evolved into like a coaching therapist, so I use those terms sort of, synonymously. They're not. Therapists come from a medical model, a diseased model, because they're often connected with insurance, and insurance has to diagnose, you have to be diagnosed with a mental health disorder. And coaching and therapy often involves going into your past and past issues, and your childhood, et cetera. Whereas coaching is very present and future focused, and coaching is not, it doesn't come from that same medical model. I guess you could say I'm sort of like the best of both. I I have both perspectives. So when I work with people, we are looking at what's going on right now and what you want your life to look like in the future, but we're not ignoring the glaringly obvious things that have happened in your past that are still affecting you today. We're not going to go back and revisit all that if we don't have to, but so much of the time we are a byproduct of what's happened to us, and we haven't really fully addressed that or healed from that. But I have a real coaching perspective from the sense that when you work with me, you're going to get homework, you're going to get tools, there's going to be things I ask you to do, there's going to be stuff in the session we're going to do. It's not cookie cutter, it's very much shaped around what your specific needs are. And the people that work with me are really happy with the results they get because they've got tools that they can take out and apply, and they don't need to be in therapy for the rest of their lives. That's a lot of words to answer your question, but
That
yeah.
was great. Very thorough. No, I understand. I mean, you did a good job.
Cool. Thank you.
Um, all right. I appreciate you telling us that's kind of what you're doing now. And
Yeah.
then your podcast is called High Ticket Woman. So, um, what's High Ticket Woman mean? What's that about?
Yeah.
And how does that come into play with the type of therapy that you're putting out there? How are those connected?
Yeah, so I got the name high ticket sort of as a play on, coaching and high ticket, offers.
Mm.
And I've done 13 years now working with business coaches off and on. And a lot of them all say the same thing. You got to have a high ticket offer. So I started thinking about what high ticket means in terms of like, us, our individual selves. High ticket means high value, and why do business coaches say have a high ticket program? Because people place value on things that they have to they have to invest in more. So I wanted to use the term high ticket because I wanted to convey this meaning of when you invest in yourself as a woman, when you show up for yourself, when you take the time to care for yourself. We women are by nature nurturers and caretakers of everybody else. And often when we get to be a certain age, it can start in our mid 30s and then it continues on. We kind of get to this crossroad in our lives where not everything in our life has ended up the way we wanted it to. There's some unmet expectations, there's some disappointments in life, and we have a choice in that moment. We can blame, we can say, it was my rotten childhood or my lousy ex-husband or, whatever. Or we can say, you know what, it's up to me to do something about that. I'm going to take personal responsibility for the life I have right now and the life I want to live. So that's what High Ticket Woman is all about. I cover all kinds of subjects related to if you're not living the life you want, expect more from yourself. Don't blame. What do you want to change? What do you need to change right now so that the value you place on yourself is so exceptional that everybody else in your life will treat you with that same value?
I love that. My guess when I first heard it was that it had something to do with self-worth,
Yeah.
self-value and that type of thing. And I love the way that you've, encapsulated that. And there's that ownership and that accountability of if you don't like
Yeah.
what you're doing, then do something
Then do
different.
something about it. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great.
So thank you.
And is that what your coaching's based on then, that you do?
Yes. So I'm actually I just hired a new business coach and I'm actually sort of expanding things out. The website's going to get changed and I'm going to be more sort of like couples focused and,
Mm.
um, working, doing marriage counseling. Um, everybody wants you to niche down, right? That's really hard for therapists who have, done it, seen it all, done it all, worked with so many agents. It's really hard to niche down. And I have fought that, let myself be niche down in ways that I'm like, I don't really think that's my niche. And so then I get more general. And so now I'm niching down again because I'm passionate about relationships, but I have to really sort of decide, pick a relationship, Debbie, so when I work with couples, that still entails a lot of individual work. And a lot of times people who are struggling in a relationship may not have buy-in from their partner. A lot of women seek out therapy far faster than men do. That's just the reality. I love working with men, by the way. If I part of me at times, I've told my husband this a number of times, part of me sometimes thinks about completely re-niching to working with men, because when I have a male client, I'm like, I love this. I love the way those sessions flow. I love how logical it is. I love how linear it is. They're so appreciative of the tools I give them. But the reality is far more women seek out therapy than men do. So even as I niche down to work with couples, the reality is I know I'm going to be working with a lot of women, and maybe their partner will join at some point. And this has happened to me. I'll start working with a woman. Her husband's really skeptical, but then he starts to see her changing in a way that is supportive and encouraging of him. And he realizes, oh, this woman hasn't ganged, they're not ganging up on me. I'm not the bad guy. Maybe I'm going to go check this woman out. Maybe there's some value here. And he ends up being a part of the process, which is exciting for me, because then we get to affect a whole lot more change. So yeah, I think in season two, I'm not really sure how I'm going to do this, because I don't really want to make over the name of the podcast, but I think I'm going to just, as I start season two, start to shift the focus to the actual relationship, like the high ticket relationship. Keep the name, but start to really shift the content over to relationships. Yeah.
Hmm. All right. I mean, that'll be interesting. It's sort of the best of both worlds. You're talking about wanting to work with
Yeah.
men and still wanting to work with women,
Yeah.
and now you're working with
Yeah.
couples. So there you go.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
know. I'm fingers crossed. I'm excited. I'm hopeful.
That's great. And you said that's for the second season. Now the first season wraps up in a week or two.
In the week, yeah.
Okay. And you've been doing this for about a year then, the
Yeah, a little over a
podcasting part?
year. I've only missed my podcast comes out weekly on Tuesdays, and I think I've only missed 2 weeks. So I started towards the end of August, and I'll finish up the middle of September of this year. Yeah.
That's great.
So,
So yeah, you missed, but you're still going to complete the episodes. And so your season,
yeah.
the way you
Yeah.
clock it, is 1 year's worth, 52 weeks.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yes.
Good
I
deal.
guess there's another way to do that, but
There's
that's the
hundreds
way
of
I'm
ways
doing
to
it.
do it. Yeah, I've seen guys who do like 10 episodes and they call it a season.
Oh,
And
interesting.
3 months
Okay.
later they put out season two with 10 more episodes. It's kind of like watching Netflix, where you don't really know how many episodes are in what, but
Good point. That's true. Yeah.
yeah.
We won't go down that rabbit hole. But yeah, I've noticed that with Netflix. Like, you're calling this a season and there's only 7 episodes. What's up with that? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I'm kind of like, really? I waited all this time for that? Come
I feel like I've been gypped.
on. Okay, so you've been doing it about that long. And then now you mentioned if we can kind of shift over to the podcasting. Love your
Sure, yeah.
story. Absolutely love your
Thank you.
story. I mean, wow. And you had a business coach kind of help you out, and not everybody
Yes.
has that. So I mean, that seems like that would
Yeah.
be a pretty good advantage to have somebody helping you get started.
Yeah.
What advice did you get from them that you can share? Not to give away the farm, necessarily, but what advice did you get from was it a him? I thought you used a
Yeah,
male.
out of Australia. So I was in group coaching with him. He didn't specifically walk me through anything related to the podcast. I just basically got the idea of doing a podcast. And when I would be on my coaching sessions, I could ask him questions. So I went out. I have a virtual assistant in the Philippines, and then my husband also works with me. So I'm a team of three, and we just went out and we Googled like the best podcasting hosts. So I used Buzzsprout, and Buzzsprout was really easy up front for me to use. The couple times I had technical questions and I emailed them, they answered me right away. The answers were, they made sense. I was able to implement them. Um, and I used my business coach at the time. He was using Restream to do live streaming. I started using that. I ended up stopped using that. I decided I'm not going to do video. I'm just going to do audio. And I had questions for him that I could ask in the group coaching, but I basically had to just do a lot of Googling and figuring things out. So I recorded my intro, and I'm lucky to have a brother-in-law who's a sound engineer out in California, a professional. So he edited that for me. And but I had to go out and find, royalty-free, intro music. So by the time I did the podcast, I wasn't scared anymore. There's a little more of a backstory. When I got back from Jordan in 2018, I was scared because I hired someone to do a website, I hired someone to do a photo shoot, and now was this big unknown of social media. And I'll never forget the first time my friend who did my website, who also has a career in social media, is like, Debbie, you got a blog. I'm like, blog. And I'm a writer. I mean, I love writing, but blogging just seems so intimidating. But I did it. And then she said, Debbie, you gotta put little videos out on Facebook. I'm like, put myself out on Facebook, and so I had to buy a ring camera light, stand and all that. And I remember making my first little videos and then I play them back for myself. I'm like, oh, can I do this? Can I put this out there? By the time I got to the podcast last year, I'm like, I can do this. This is just one more thing that I was totally scared to do, 5 years ago. And now I'm adding something new to the mix. And I'm just going to take it one step at a time. And if I look like a big giant idiot, so be it. I've been looking like a big giant idiot for 5 years. So you know what? We'll just add one more thing to the list. So it was a learning process of putting myself out there and not being worried about what everybody's going to think and not being afraid of, I was afraid of like being laughed at on Facebook and the, stupid comments and, thumbs down. And that has never happened to me, not one single time.
That's great.
But but the day's coming, now because I've said that someone's going to do it. But
Right.
I mean, the day's coming, but I have been mentally preparing myself this whole time for the people who are like, I hate you, I hate what you have to say, it's really stupid, right? I've been mentally preparing myself for that for years now. So I'm not saying I'm immune, I'm just saying I'm ready. I'm ready for the negative feedback, and I'm okay with looking stupid. So yeah.
That's pretty
Because
powerful
I
right
know
there.
there's somebody out there who needs what I have. So yeah.
That's some pretty strong armor you're toting around. If you feel like that, I mean, I don't care what they think about me, and I'm ready. I mean, that's tough.
Ready. Yeah.
That's
Now we'll
great.
see if it's really true when I get that first. I shouldn't say I haven't gotten some negative feedback. I put a couple really strong videos out there that I knew would be pretty polarizing, and I had a couple women say, "You're crazy," but that they could have said a whole lot worse.
True. Very true. I mean, some mild disagreement is not bad. That's interaction. That's
Yeah,
what we call that.
it's interaction, and that's what everybody keeps saying. Like, you're getting people talking. That's a good thing. So.
Right. Now, how do you go about promoting your podcast? What have you found that works well, and what have you found is kind of like, waste of time, just in your world with your mission and your vision?
Yeah, honestly, I think this is the part that I need to do a lot better at. So I have a private Facebook group that anybody can join, and I go live. I do a live Q&A in there every second Friday, and I advertise the podcast in there. And then I have a subscriber list. I did, Facebook ads a year ago. I built a subscriber list. And I occasionally put an email nurture out there talking about the podcast. But this is the area I think that I'm really deficient on. I don't really actually do much to market it. And, I don't, I, I don't have, Buzzsprout sends you out, a weekly notice of how many people have downloaded. And I look at that, it's not a high number. And then I move on. I'm not, so I think this is probably the area that, no, not, I don't think, I know this is the area that I need to get better at, um, that I just have been like not thinking about. I've just been going through the motions. So yeah, I think I probably need like an expert like you to show me how to do that. Yeah.
Oh, I thank you for the compliment, but I've been doing this a very long time. I learned all my stuff the hard way, so I have a little bit of an idea on how to do it.
I
Um,
bet you do.
yeah, but no, I love that answer though. That's just very honest. It's like, hey, I
Yeah,
I really haven't gotten to that yet. That's okay.
yeah,
You're in your first
yeah.
year doing it, and it's
I know.
I tell everybody who owns a business of any kind, it doesn't matter if
Yeah,
you're online or not, that you need to have a podcast. I think that every business should have a podcast.
podcast, yeah.
I'm a little older, and so, back in the day, everybody had to have a business card. That wasn't enough after a while, and so then anybody who was in business, needed to have a book that they had written. Like, oh, did you write a book? What's your book? And you end up handing that out almost as your credibility in your business card. Nobody reads anymore, so now it's, do you have a
I
podcast?
do. Well, you know
It's,
what? I have all of those. I have the business cards. I have the book because
do
I
you?
wrote the book in 2018. Yeah, that was another one of my sort of things that kept me going. That as I was going through my separation and divorce, I'm like, this has always been on my bucket list. I'm writing this book. It centers around my whole message for women about living life intentionally. So yeah, I got the book too, but I'm not even really promoting that very much. I mean, I am in this moment, but yeah, I got to get a lot better about these things for sure.
Okay, well, let's start now on
Okay,
helping you
let's
promote.
do
What's the name of the
that.
book?
Oh, good idea. Yeah, it's called The Path Less Traveled.
The Path
The,
Less Traveled,
yes.
okay, by Debbie Caudle.
Yeah, it's on
Okay.
Amazon. Yeah.
Is it? It's on Amazon, still for sale.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That's
it is.
great.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look that up. That's really cool. Congratulations. I mean, you come on a
Thanks.
podcast to talk about you and you don't bring up that you wrote a book?
I know. I said my whole life I'm the world's worst networker. And the business coaching company I hired literally just last week, one of the first modules I was working way through is like networking. I'm like, oh, my nemesis, networking. Yeah.
And before I forget, because we glossed over this too, do you want to tell everybody the name of your private group so they can look it up on Facebook in case they want to try and connect with you?
Oh, sure. It's called relationship resolution. Relationship resolution. I wanted it to be relationship resolutions, but somebody else already has that. So no S at the end of resolution. So yeah, men and women can come join that. I post all my little videos get posted there as well as to my personal page. But that's where I do my live Q&A. And people can DM me their questions ahead of time, and then I answer them anonymously. Anything, any relationship question. And that group is growing. I've got like maybe 170, 180 people in that group now. So yeah, I'm
That's
pleased
strong.
about that.
That's a strong group.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah,
Good for
yeah,
you.
yeah. Thank you.
Very, very good. Okay, cool. All right. Hey, we're at it. We're promoting you. So what's your website?
Oh, my website is
Yeah.
debbiecaudle.com. So Caudle. So it's a little, people don't always know how to spell that. So
Got it.
debbiecaudle.com.
All right. And we're going to put a whole bunch of the stuff in the show notes for everybody too. So it's
Oh,
not like they
perfect.
have to remember it, but I want them to know to look for it, in the show notes.
Sure.
So that's why we're talking about
Yes.
it. Okay. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. So that's how we did that. Promotion we talked about, not your favorite thing. Have you tried any, so you've done Facebook though?
Yeah, I was doing Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. And I just finally decided I can't do all of this. So I decided I'm just doing Facebook and Instagram because same company. And I my husband was editing all my videos, but he's way too much of a perfectionist. So now I've taught myself how to edit my little 2 and 3 minute videos on Canva. So proud of myself.
Good
So
job.
I schedule those out in, Meta Business Suite. So they come out once a week. My podcast comes out once a week. And I have a busy schedule of clients. I mean, I see 20 to 24 clients a week. So um, so every time I'm not seeing clients, I try to give myself Saturdays and Sundays off, but a lot of times I am working my business, I only see clients 3.5 days a week, but the other days I'm working my business, I'm
Right.
thinking of new content. I'm finishing up a workshop right now because I have multiple things going on. I have 2 courses that I've created primarily for women. One is along the lines of the book. It's also called The Path Less Traveled, and it's a 7 module in-depth program that with lots of work inside of it. And then I have a course specifically for women who are divorced and are in a new relationship and it's not going well, or they want to be in a relationship, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done to process their divorce. So, and then I'm creating sort of mini workshops. And I have a text-based coaching program too. So I've got all these things going on that, I need to, create content for and finish up. So after you and I are done today, I'll be recording I have a workshop called Growing Myself Up. And so I'm going to be recording that, and then I'm going to be promoting that. And then that will go up on my website for people to access. So even though my ultimate goal is to, get clients, I'm always looking for ways to provide really good content for people. A lot of it's free on my website. I have a freebies tab. The workshops and these other things, they are, you know, easier to access in terms of price point. Obviously, working with me one-on-one is the most expensive way to do it, but I've tried to create this tiered system where people can get a lot of stuff from me for very little cost. So yeah.
Nice. Given value. I love that. That's great.
Thanks.
All right. So it is time for my corny question that I ask pretty much
Okay,
everybody.
corny question.
So
All
here
right,
it is,
I'm
corny
ready.
question. What is your favorite part? What do you like the most? Okay. What do you love the most about doing your podcast in accordance with your business? And even though it's a strong word, what do you hate or dislike the most about doing podcasting as it works with your business?
Well, my favorite thing, which I never expected, is interviewing people. I've met some of the coolest people through doing this, and I got on a Facebook group. That's probably how you and I got connected. I found a Facebook group for connecting with other podcasters
Hmm.
and, requested guests. And, so everybody's hitting me up to be on my podcast. And in the early days of this, I had canned questions, right? And I was asking all these women the same questions. And ultimately, I threw the questions out and I do what you do now. I just let it organically go where it's going to go. And I actually form my questions as they're talking. Like I'll jot down little notes as they're talking to come back and ask them about. But I've met some of the coolest people, men and women, through this process. I met a woman who this one just went live this week, who lost her son. Then her apartment complex didn't completely burn down, but it had to be completely evacuated. And so she became homeless, her and her daughter. Then she suffered a massive stroke and she is bedridden. And from her bed, she has written 4 books with her left hand because her right side is paralyzed on her phone. That's insane. And she is the most upbeat, positive person. She has been on over 200 podcasts as a guest in multiple countries. So that's what I love the most about this. Like, who am I going to meet next? And I've met women in other countries doing all kinds of different things, all who are wanting to give their best to women. And I've met men, I've met couples who, do relationship counseling. I've met so many different really cool people. And the thing I don't like is what I've already told you, promoting my podcast. I love showing up for the interviews. I love putting it together. I love having the conversations. It's the, okay, now, Debbie, you've got to let the world know that this stuff is out there part that's like, don't like that. So.
Love it. Love it. And I love that you mentioned, whoops. Yeah, we're getting a little echo. Still there? Yeah, we're good. Uh,
Yeah.
all right. I love that you mentioned that episode because I got to listen to that one. I think that's your most recent one, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that
That
was
was Alma.
quite I mean, what a story that woman's got.
Yeah,
That
yes,
was really something.
yes.
So yeah, folks, if you're checking out, Debbie's podcast, make sure you check that episode. That's a good one to start with, maybe.
Yeah, I
Because
agree. I mean, it's humbling to hear someone's story like that and go, there are there are no excuses, which is what I named the episode, no excuses. Because how can you go through all of that and then write 4 books and have such a positive attitude and then I look at my life and go, oh, I don't want to do this. Oh, I don't want to do that. Right? Like, get off your whitey butt, Debbie, and go do it.
Yeah.
If Alma can be in a hospital bed and write 4 books, then there are no excuses. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you want to sleep in or something on a Friday. I mean, what's wrong with
I know, and almost missed this. I know. Shame on me.
Oh, I love it. Listen, thank you so much for all of this, for all of your time, for, I
You're
mean,
welcome.
everything you've shared with everybody. Um, Last question I usually wrap up with, and then I'll let you go. I know you got a busy day and
Sure.
you got recordings
Sure.
to do. And
Yeah.
the you've been doing this for about a year. And in
Yes.
terms of the podcasting, not, of course, the therapy, which I know you've been doing a long time, but the
Yeah.
podcasting part. So for someone who's, starting off, maybe they're, in that first 10 to 20 episode mark and they're going, yeah, I want to keep podcasting. Now what? So what's the best piece of advice you've got for people to, not succeed financially in podcasting, but to succeed in podcasting?
Well, I go back to what my business coach said to me. It's a minimum of a 2-year investment. So I always had that longevity in my mind. I always knew if you're going to go through all this effort, Debbie, to do this and commit to it on a weekly basis, then you better commit to showing up and doing this for 2 years minimum. And so that put me in a mindset that I think is really important for brand new podcasters. You've got to look way down the road. Don't expect big things after 10 episodes. Don't expect a ginormous audience. These things take time. It's taken me time to grow from having 0 clients in 2018 to having 20 clients a week. That takes time. It takes time to grow an audience. So I just decided to fall in love with the process. And I've always been a process girl, like instead of being hung up on the outcome, I fell in love with the process of finding my guests and thinking of the content. I like to mix it up with a monologue and an interview. There are things that I want to say to my audience that I want to just be able to say in an episode. And then there are other times when I want them to be able to hear from other people. And I don't care if anybody else is doing it that way or not. That's how I wanted to do it. So that's part of the reason why I haven't just been out there listening to a lot of other podcasters, because for me, I didn't want to start feeling like you're not doing it right, Debbie. I just wanted to do it. And again, fall in love with the process. So yeah.
Love it. Love it. Fall in love with the process. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Folks, the host of High Ticket Woman, Debbie Caudle. Debbie, thank you so much for being on today and sharing the way you have and just lighting up everybody's day. I
Thanks,
enjoyed
Roy.
talking to you today.
I am so glad that I got myself here to do this, because what a great way to start my day. This was a ton of fun. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, folks, you have heard yet another fantastic episode of the Podcaster Nation. Folks, this is your podcast. This is yours. This is your place. It's your time. This is the podcast that raises all ships. So keep sailing. I'll talk to you soon.